Welcome back to another episode of the Psychopedia podcast. I'm your co-host, Hank Sinatra, here with my Rapunzel-ass co-host.
Investigator Slater.
Throw down your hair.
I'm calling myself Avatar because I can just plug in my ponytail and ride a dragon.
What?
Isn't that how it works?
Have you ever seen the movie?
Yeah, a long time ago, but yeah.
Plug in your ponytail and ride a dragon?
The avatars with their long braids, which is what I have in my hair right now. If you want to reference, jump over to YouTube. And they take their braided ponytail and don't they connect it to their animal that they ride around?
I'll be honest with you. I saw it. I have no idea.
So you're the one who doesn't know.
You could be right.
But Rapunzel also works.
It does.
Today.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't you know it? We are here about to record a podcast episode. And today is December 25th, which if you celebrate is Christmas. If you don't, it's literally just a date.
No, that's not true. It's a day off. The vibe is wonderful.
Day off. You're right.
Magic is in the air on Christmas.
You're right.
Honestly.
Okay.
So Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. Happy day off, relaxation to those who don't. And maybe you're just in with your families.
And if it's not such a good day for you, we are here for you and we are your family and we have a gift for you in the form of, I don't know anything about today except it's Christmas and we're doing a two-parter.
Yes, we are.
So I know a little bit, but not enough. I'm with you. I mean, you know it's Christmas already. I mean, you woke up today, thank God. Little inside info, it is a two-parter, but I mean, I'll be honest with you. After Diddy, three-parter, I'm starting to, the two-parters are starting to grow on me.
I'm absolutely elated to hear that. I remember when we started this podcast, a two-parter for you.
Oh, agony.
Was a tall order.
Yeah, we had to do it in 2 separate days.
2 separate days. You needed a cool-off period, like a serial killer.
Yeah.
You really were not, it was
you're
a
a
lot for you.
spree podcaster.
Exactly.
That's what you are. You get on a run and nobody's stopping you.
I could do this every day.
I know you
I could
could.
do multiple parters every single day. I live for this.
How would you research?
I'd get it done. Don't worry. Who needs sleep?
I don't know. Not me.
I'm fueled by true crime.
That's right. You know what? Just a little early Tanks tidbit. When you're tired as a parent, when you have a newborn, didn't you feel like the sleep was secondary to the love you were feeling? Like you were fueled by love?
The only way any of us parents get through it.
Isn't that a nice little mechanism that's in there?
I love it. Oh yeah, your love, parenting in general, your primary emotion has to be love to get through any of this, to get through the tantrums, to get through the lack of sleep, the worrying, the homework, the fighting, the everything. Yeah. Your primary emotion, you have to be driven by love.
I got a great piece of advice when my son was born from a friend of mine, Bill Kennedy, rest in peace. I miss you. He had a widowmaker. You know what that is?
No.
He was doing yoga on the beach in California and he just died. It's like something with the heart that just, if you don't know it's there, it will kill you.
Oh my God.
It's called a widowmaker.
That's terrible.
It's a terrible name.
It is. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about your friend.
Orphan maker.
Oh.
What the fuck, man? Doctors, why are you doing this? Anyway, he said, when the baby's born, shirk all responsibilities for 1 week. If you can. If you can't, whatever. But don't leave the house. There's magic in the air during that time. And it was 100% true. The other thing that Jessica said to me was it's going to take us some time to get used to having this baby in the house. We got to grow to love it. You love it in one way immediately, but then it's kind of like a stranger living in your house. And I was like, how dare you say that about my son, my unborn son? 2 days in, I'm like, who is this motherfucker? She's screaming all the time. Get this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember I felt that way in the hospital, and then we'll get to the case.
Yes.
I thought there was something very wrong with me. Because while I felt immediate love, I didn't feel that intense bond immediately, that fairy tale, oh, my whole life led up to this moment, little being. The love was there 100%. I would have died for him the second he was taken from, you know what I mean? But it did take a little bit for that bond. And I remember being vulnerable and talking about that to somebody, actually one of Dave's former colleagues. And she looked at me like I had 10 heads. I'll never forget that.
Did she have any kids?
She did. She had 3 kids. She goes, I'll never forget. She goes, but you're the mama bear. Like it was supposed to be natural and intrinsic for me to just know everything about this tiny little human off the bat immediately. My first child, I'd never done it before.
People have short memories.
Yeah, it was a lot. I think that only added to the postpartum that I was struggling with. But
So thanks, former colleague.
Exactly.
Listen, if you're here and you love us and you want to do us a solid, review us on Apple, rate, subscribe is huge, share it with people, tell the world about it. You know what I mean? Like, spread the good news. Spread the good word. Spread the gospel of Psychopedia to your friends and family.
Especially on Christmas.
Yes, if they're into that kind of thing. And if they're not, we have quite a few people who listen here who are not into true crime and just are here for the laughs and the storytelling. Okay?
Amen.
Exactly. So, also, if you love us and you're not getting enough of what you need and want, you can head on over to patreon.com/psychopediapod for all you could ever dream of and more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of content over there, more than here.
And
typically.
I have to tell you, without getting into details, our patrons have shown up.
Oh, yeah.
For us. And for those who are hearing this right now, who are on Patreon, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love all of you more than I can even say right now.
We'll leave it at that.
Yes.
If you know, you know. With that said, I'm going to read off just a few Patreon names before we get going, and then we're going to get to the case in, I don't know, probably about 30 seconds. Okay. Cassidy Stay, welcome to Patreon. Pez dispenser head.
Too soon.
Is it ever not going to be too soon? Amy Balboa.
Hi, Amy. Oh, Balboa. My uncle, when I was pregnant, used to call the baby Billy Balboa.
Amy. Balboa is just Rocky. It's not, it's not even a peninsula. It's a peninsula in Newport. I don't care. That's Rocky Peninsula to me. Fucking Hitherto.
Sick.
Yeah, with
nice.
Yes, nice. And maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's crack cocaine. Don't necessarily understand that, but I like it a lot.
Excellent.
Yeah, very good. Well, welcome to all of you. Welcome to all the new Patreon members over there. We see you. We see you in the chat.
And if it's your first time here.
Yeah, if it's your first time here, welcome. If it's your 100th time here, which is a good possibility now at this point, welcome home.
Freak.
Well, I think that's about enough of that.
All right.
Right?
Yeah, I'm ready to get into this case. I've been all up in the research shabusiness with this case.
I'm sure you have. Are we doing Shabusiness Part 2?
No, there is no Part 2 at such time.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. But without any further cheer.
What?
Without any further Christmas cheer.
Oh, okay.
Let's get into this week's case.
All right. Didn't hit.
Without any further eggnog.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, let's get into this week's case.
At 1:05 p.m. on December 26th, 1996, the body of a beautiful 6-year-old little girl was discovered by her father in a dark, cold room of an old wine cellar in the basement of their Boulder, Colorado home. Just 7 hours earlier at 5:52 a.m., the child's mother called the police to report her missing after finding a shocking 2.5-page ransom note lying on a spiral staircase inside the home. From the moment that 911 call was made, the family home, where the father eventually found his daughter's lifeless body, had been teeming with family, friends, law enforcement officers, and family liaison advocates. The police claimed that they'd searched the premises upon their arrival after responding to the 911 call, initially believing this to be a kidnapping case. So then how did they miss the body of a 6-year-old child with a cord around her neck and a head wound, wrapped in a white blanket, dead on the ground in plain sight just behind a closed door? And why on God's green earth were the victim's father and his friend allowed to freely roam the home, the supposed scene of a kidnapping, enabling the father to then discover the body? Why hadn't law enforcement secured the premises, separated all potential witnesses, and conducted a proper investigation from the moment they received that 911 call? These are just a few of the countless unanswered questions that have haunted this case for decades and fueled endless speculation, theories, and condemnation from analysts, experts, and the public alike. As time goes on, the mystery only deepens, with doubt and curiosity flourishing just as freely as the people in that household on the night in question. But what truly unsettles me the most in all of this is the absolute lack of empathy for the actual tragedy at the heart of what has spiraled into a salacious spectacle, one that continues to thrive, especially with the recent resurgence of the case in the headlines, fueled by the very recent release of a Netflix documentary.
Okay.
The tragedy of a young girl's life, brutally cut short, has been overshadowed by a media circus, perpetuating a grotesque cycle that reduces her death to little more than a sensational story, rather than the heartbreaking loss it truly is. So today, on the 28th anniversary of the end of a beautiful life, as we delve into all the questions surrounding the case and explore much, much more, I hope to shed light on a story that, at its heart, is about far more than speculation, intrigue, and media headlines. It's about a real child who tragically died a very brutal death and whose devastating case deserves closure. This is the unsolved case of JonBenét Ramsey.
That's what I thought it was.
You were right.
But then as you were talking, I realized that I know nothing about this case. And I was like, no, it's not her. I don't think the father found her. But then I'm like, I don't know anything about it except for the fact that it happened and it was salacious.
It happened in our time, right? So you remember walking into like the bagel shop and every single newspaper, tabloid, magazine.
28 years ago. So I was 16?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's only been more and more information that has come out, obviously, in the decades.
Yeah.
With fewer answers, I feel like, than ever. Do you know what I mean? So as more information comes in, it seems like we get further and further away.
More and more nothing.
From being able to solve this. I just think that it's almost like the more you know, the less you know. I know that sounds silly because it's
true.
It adds so
in some
much
cases.
It adds so much clutter. And as we're going to hear, the initial investigation was so very botched that I'm not sure that we're ever going to be able to conclusively know who did this because crucial evidence is gone.
You said that it was weird that they let the father and his friend roam the house, but it was a kidnap. It wasn't like a murder scene at that point.
We are for sure getting into all of this, so I don't want to jump the gun here.
Obviously.
But I will say that even if it was a kidnapping case, you secure the premises. It's a potential crime scene. They found a ransom note, right? So presumably people were in their house and took their child. This is what the police, thought when they arrived.
Yeah.
2 officers arrived at the time when the 911 call was made, and just absolutely zero protocol was followed. Moreover, worse than that, one of the responding officers actually advised JonBenét's father to keep busy. Why don't you go explore the house, see if you can find any clues? And he found his daughter's body.
Oh, my God.
And in doing so, destroyed evidence. And depending on your position, either intentionally or not intentionally. You know what I mean? We're going to get into that.
I guess we'll get into the destroyed.
Yeah, let's start the episode as I've laid it out, and I promise we'll arrive there.
I'm sure you will.
So the entire case, from start to finish, is a riddle wrapped in a mystery, inside an enigma.
Shout out to Winnie Churchill.
Shout out to my boy. Ergo, nice. It's a 2-parter, as we've said. JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990 in Atlanta's Northside Hospital, weighing 6 pounds, 9 ounces. Her name was a combination of her father's first and middle names, John and Bennett. And
shut up.
Her nickname was Johnny B.
Really?
Really?
Oh, man, that's interesting for reasons unknown.
I know, but yes.
My middle Benet is Bennett. My middle name is Bennett.
It is indeed.
So it struck a chord with me.
I understand completely. John Ramsey, JonBenét's father, was a multi-millionaire businessman and president and CEO of Access Graphics, a computer services company that became a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin in 1991. In 1996, sadly just 5 days before discovering his daughter's body, Access Graphics grossed over $1 billion.
Really?
And John Ramsey was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Boulder Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
Access Graphics was later sold to General Electric in 1997.
Wait, so he did $1 billion and he only made it to the Boulder Chamber of Commerce?
Well, I think he surpassed that. There's definite also whispers of like him being very connected to like government organizations.
Yeah.
Of course, like every case, connections potentially to the Illuminati. I mean, he was enmeshed in
people love
in the big leagues,
explaining away hard work with conspiracies.
Yeah, and I will say right now we explore many theories in this coverage, but I am not breathing life into the outlandish conspiracy theories that are out there.
Okay.
So I'm just mentioning that. This would be a 10-parter, first of all, if I did that. But also, I don't want to take away from the real evidence and the real, possibility of figuring out who did this.
Yes.
So Patsy Ramsey, JonBenét's mother, graduated with a BA in journalism from West Virginia University and then went on to become an American beauty pageant winner, as did Patsy's sister.
Mm-hmm.
JonBenet also had a brother, Burke, who was 3 years older than her, and she had several half-siblings as well from her dad's first marriage. There was Elizabeth, who went by the name Beth, who was 21 years older than JonBenet, Melinda, who was 19 years older than JonBenet, and John Andrew, who was 13 years older than JonBenet.
From her father's first marriage, you said. Okay.
After her first birthday, JonBenet and her family made the move from Georgia to a grand house at the foot of the Rocky Mountains, about 30 miles northwest of Denver in Colorado. The sprawling home, nestled amidst the breathtaking backdrop of Colorado's rugged landscape, was intended to be an exciting new chapter for the family. Originally, JonBenet's spacious bedroom had been intended for her older stepsister, Beth, but tragically, Beth's life was cut short in a car accident in January of 1992. In the wake of this devastating loss, JonBenet took her sister's place and moved into the large, sun-filled room next to where her mother, Patsy, had been sleeping, because sadly, Patsy had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and needed to stay in a room that was strategically positioned near a bathroom.
Jeez.
These early years for JonBenet were marked by heartache, to be sure.
Yeah.
The death of her half-sister and the growing toll of her mother's illness. Yet, despite the turmoil, her childhood remained in many ways incredibly lavish. She traveled to New York, vacationed in Italy, and spent summers at her family's vast White House in Michigan, where she swam in the lake, ran wild through the woods, and embodied the quote-unquote tomboy spirit that her parents often spoke of. So despite the shadows cast by family tragedy, JonBenet's world was one of adventure, privilege, and boundless possibility. Despite her love for outdoor adventures and getting dirty, JonBenet's parents entered her into the world of beauty pageantry at just 4 years old, before she even started kindergarten. JonBenet quickly stood out with her platinum blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and really beautiful smile. Patsy and Patsy's sister, as I mentioned, had both won the Miss West Virginia crown and competed in Miss America, so JonBenet carried on a family legacy as she shone brightly on the pageant stage. She performed tap routines and sang patriotic songs and won the crowns of Little Miss Charlevoix and Little Miss Colorado Sunburst, while qualifying in October 1995 for a national pageant the following year.
Wait, so she won pageants in Michigan and Colorado?
Yeah. She earned sweeping titles such as America's Royal Little Miss Christmas, Little Miss Colorado, Colorado All-Star, Kids Cover Girl, and more.
So
all in
strange,
all,
by the way.
it's a wild world. All in all, JonBenet accrued 24 trophies and titles, sang and waved from floats and parades that had her name on the float, and seemed to be dominating the competitive world of beauty pageantry. But despite the dazzling glitz and glamour that child beauty pageants seem to offer on the outside, the industry is rife with controversy, and for good reason.
Yeah.
Critics argue that these pageants prematurely sexualize young girls and place undue focus on their appearance when they should be learning to build healthy self-esteem. Contestants are often dressed in provocative, flashy outfits, coated with spray tans, fitted with fake teeth, and styled with elaborate adult-like hairdos. This concoction creates an unsettling, shrunken woman appearance that seems to invite unwanted, even criminal attention from perverse, predatory eyes.
Yeah.
The routines these young girls perform, refined through countless hours of practice, are often flirtatious, provocative, and overly sexualized, with children winking, smiling, and working the crowd as if they were seasoned performers. In some cases, pageant mothers openly admit to giving their children sugary pixie sticks, dubbed pageant crack, to keep their kids hopped up and unnaturally energized during the competition.
Oh my God.
At their core, modern American child beauty pageants are designed for an adult audience, crafted to captivate and entertain grown-ups rather than nurture young girls.
It's all about the vicarious pleasure of the adults in the room.
I think that's one element, absolutely. And
Or, I mean, a way for like the moms to shine through in a way that they couldn't themselves. So they're having their daughters take that on, that pressure.
right. Or in this case, Patsy was a beauty queen. So just like carrying the torch. But I think in addition to that being one aspect, I do think there's probably plenty of mothers who are living vicariously through their daughters. But when I say that it's, designed for an adult audience, think about it like the judges are adults, the coaches are adults. It's an adult dominated world, but the little figures, their little wind-up toys are children.
That's what I mean. It's all for the adults in the room.
Exactly.
It's not like the kids have no idea probably what's even going on.
And unfortunately, it exposes contestants like JonBenét to an increased risk of predatory behavior. The likelihood that one of these perverts could have been responsible for such a horrific crime against JonBenét is both chilling and plausible. In fact, one of JonBenét's photographers at one point, a man named Randall DeWitt Simmons, was later found guilty of downloading child pornography on a restaurant's Wi-Fi in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And in 2021, he was convicted on 15 counts of first-degree encouraging sexual abuse and sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Wow.
Just a reminder of the dangers lurking in the industry and working with child contestants.
Yeah.
The industry operates largely unregulated and slipping through the cracks of child labor laws, which allows parents to push their children to the brink without consequence. So these young girls, often dressed in adult-like costumes and forced to perform tirelessly for hours, are caught in a whirlwind of competition that has little regard for their emotional or physical well-being. A study published by the American Psychological Association highlights the toll this industry takes and reveals that girls who frequently participate in beauty pageants often struggle with feelings of inadequacy, both physically and also academically. Constant pressure to conform to unrealistic beauty standards stunts their self-esteem, causes lasting damage to their sense of self, or it can. I'm not going to say it always does. Mm-hmm. And worse still, participants in child pageantry are more vulnerable to eating disorders, drug abuse, and depression.
I wonder if the kids are even competing against each other in their minds. They're competing for their mother's love.
That's deep, yeah.
Is what it feels like. Like they don't know what's at stake. All they know is that if they don't win, their mommy is going to be mad at them.
I think at this very young age, that's probably true.
Yeah.
It just turns childhood into a commodity for adult consumption. Pop quiz. About how many children participate in beauty pageants every year? A, 75,000, B, 250,000, C, 500,000.
I thought you were going down. 75,000, 250,000, or 500,000?
Yeah.
75,000.
No.
250,000?
Correct.
That's too many.
It is too many.
That's a lot more than pop quiz notwithstanding. Nice. If you had just said, hey, give me a number off the top of your head of how many kids you think compete in pageants. If I thought about it, maybe not, but first instinct is like in the hundreds.
Yeah, I know. No, I mean, it's an industry, And listen, I can understand, as a parent taking pride like in your child and having that experience with them. So JonBenét's father made a ton of money, as I mentioned, and he was able to finance the custom handmade costumes, which often won her best wardrobe titles, as well as all the talent lessons. At this stage of JonBenét's super young life, she seemed to be thriving, mostly. Because she had an issue that she was struggling with on a regular basis that at the time, no one but her parents knew about. And that issue was wetting herself day and night leading up to her death. In fact, on the day of her murder, there was evidence that little JonBenét had wet her bed. At this point, I will introduce you to one of the theories out there that connects to the issue of JonBenét wetting herself. And that theory suggests that JonBenét was killed by her mother, Patsy, who, while cleaning JonBenét after she wet the bed, was too rough, either intentionally or not, and caused a fatal head wound. According to this theory, Patsy then staged a kidnapping by writing the ransom note and wrapping a cord around JonBenét's neck to make it look like a brutal murder by a depraved monster. So let's explore this theory for a minute. A former Boulder detective named Steve Thomas, who resigned in August 1998 after investigating JonBenét Ramsey's death for nearly 20 months, wrote a very controversial book titled JonBenét Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation. And in that book, and in public interviews, including one that he had face-to-face with Patsy and John Ramsey on Larry King Live, Steve points the finger exclusively and unapologetically at Patsy. Steve Thomas theorizes that Patsy, frustrated and overwhelmed and apparently distraught over her upcoming 40th birthday, slammed JonBenét's head against a hard surface, which inadvertently caused her death. Now, the timing of this theory could align with the evidence, because by the time JonBenét's body was discovered in the basement by her father at 1:05 the next day on December 26th, rigor mortis had fully set in, indicating she likely died between 10 p.m. on Christmas, December 25th, and 6 a.m. on December 26th. But some people not only suspect Patsy of being the murderer, but also wonder whether John Ramsey, the one who found JonBenét's body, was the one responsible for placing it there to begin with. Meaning he was either the killer, or that theory is like pretty much, most theories don't place John as the killer, but in this particular theory, if Patsy was the killer, then those who subscribe to that feel that John covered it up. Furthermore, it's been theorized that perhaps John had been sexually abusing JonBenét, which may have explained her sudden wetting herself on a regular basis. And we've talked about bedwetting before and how it's potentially linked to childhood sexual abuse. Obviously, it's not, always the reason if your child is wetting himself or herself.
Yeah.
You don't have to jump to the conclusion that it's sexual abuse, but there is a correlation.
Yeah.
And here's why. A child who sadly is being sexually abused will have emotional distress. And the trauma and stress from abuse can disrupt a child's ability to control their bladder. There's also the element of regression. So if a child had previously been fully potty trained, sudden bedwetting or accidents might signal a regression in response to trauma. And then there's the physical element. So sexual abuse may involve physical harm to the genital area, which could lead to pain or discomfort when attempting to urinate. And this pain then causes the victim to withhold from urinating voluntarily.
Oh my God.
Additionally, girls who are sexually abused are more likely to have pelvic floor dysfunction, including lower urinary tract disorders, than girls who have not been abused. And then lastly, there's the shame and fear element of sexual abuse in children as well. And that sort of manifests in a way that they feel shame or even fear surrounding their own bodies, which could then lead them to have behaviors like avoiding the bathroom and then wetting themselves to just cope.
Yeah. John finding her it's very mad slasher of him to just go, oh, I'm going to walk down here. Remember me with the mad slasher?
Yes. Somebody destroyed the recliner chair with this razor blade that's in my hand.
They found one thing and they were like, who did this? And I was like, I had the razor in my hand. I was like, I don't know.
Exactly.
I was like, you also might want to check under the bed, behind the sofa, behind the chair, the wallpaper in the bathroom.
My God, child.
The pillows in my cousin's room. I knew where all of
Very
the cuts were
suspect.
because I did them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we get into, obviously, how and why it was even possible for him to have found the body. But this theory for now, though, we just know that he did find the body.
Yes.
And obviously, him finding it just in and of itself is suspect.
Yes.
Also, according to Steve Thomas, he thoroughly considered John Ramsey as a suspect, but then categorically eliminated him, citing a lack of evidence or any history suggesting that he'd ever molested his children. That said, Steve Thomas believes that John lied about when he discovered JonBenét's body and his involvement with covering up the murder. According to a law enforcement agent named Linda Arndt, who was one of the two responding officers after the 911 call came in, John was unaccounted for about an hour.
Wow.
Steve suspects that is when he actually found the body, which would have been at around 11 a.m. Then, later that day, when John decided to search the house, along with one of his friends who was at the house, a man named Fleet White. And this was after the suggestion of Linda Arndt, why don't you go make yourself busy, go have a little search around the house. Right? That's when he apparently, allegedly, according to Linda Arndt, quickly headed directly to the basement room where JonBenét lay. Additionally, John's older son from his previous marriage, John Andrew, told investigators that his father told him that he found the body at 11 a.m., though it wasn't until after 1 p.m. that John, searched the house and was carrying JonBenét's body from the basement upstairs, absolutely hysterical.
This guy's a real egomaniac, huh? Naming all his kids John something?
Oh, interesting. Or 2 of them anyway, yeah. So according to this theory, Patsy staged the scene after she committed the murder. She wrote the ransom note that she supposedly found, and she manipulated the evidence to cover up the crime. Steve Thomas believes that John Ramsey knew that his wife was involved the moment he read the ransom note and immediately went into protection mode from that moment on.
Protect his wife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when he found the body really at 11 a.m., according to this theory, he staged it. Then he, quote unquote, discovered her at 1:00 p.m. after he had some time to manipulate the evidence. Then, after discovering or rediscovering, depending on whether or not you believe this theory, the body, he picked it up, ripping off a piece of duct tape that was covering JonBenét's mouth, and carried her little body upstairs into the main part of the house, effectively tampering with the crime scene.
Oh my God. Well, the tampering is one thing, but God, imagine being at a house for a kidnapping and the dad comes up out of the basement holding the dead child.
Oh my God, no. And she was in some state, which we will hear about. There is some evidence, depending on interpretation, that supports the theory that JonBenét's murder was staged to make it look like it was done by an intruder.
Mm-hmm.
One is the strip of duct tape found on JonBenét's mouth that had bloody mucus on it and this is a quote, a perfect set of child's lip prints, which did not indicate a tongue impression or resistance. So this could suggest that it was not used to silence her, but instead was placed on her mouth after she was unconscious, an indication potentially of staging.
Mm-hmm.
Another potential piece of evidence is the fact that the basement lights were on, because an intruder is unlikely to put on lights, but arguably someone who is staging a crime scene would and then might forget to turn them off.
Yeah.
There were leaves found inside the basement around the body, which the Ramseys say shows that an intruder came through the window. But if the window was broken the preceding summer, as claimed by John Ramsey, then the leaves and outside debris found inside could have just blown into the basement over time.
Yeah.
And another thing that some people believe points to the Ramsey family's guilt and the fact that they're staging the murder to look like it was an intruder is the fact that they would not submit to a lie detector test administered by the FBI despite numerous requests over years and years. In May 2000, John and Patsy finally arranged to have a lie detector test administered, but they would only do it privately. And they had to have it done twice because the first test came back inconclusive, while the second test came back that they were telling the truth. But
not in their defense, but I could see myself not wanting to take a lie detector.
Absolutely. First of all, they're inadmissible in court.
Yeah.
Right? And second of all, John and Patsy's attorney told the Washington Post in April of 2000 that they didn't want the FBI involved in the test because their polygraph exam is designed to intimidate and interrogate, and that's a quote, rather than determine the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So Patsy and John were, we'll do it, but we'll do it, with somebody who's impartial. Obviously, though, there's a school of people who don't feel that when you pay somebody privately to do something, it's impartial.
Yeah.
The validity of polygraph testing has been a subject of ongoing debate for years and years and years. And one of the core issue lies in its theoretical foundation. There is no scientific evidence to suggest that any specific pattern of physiological reactions is exclusively linked to deception. In other words, an honest person might experience nervousness or anxiety while telling the truth, while a dishonest person may not display any signs of stress or discomfort. This inherent uncertainty raises significant concerns about the polygraph's reliability as a tool for detecting deception, which is why it's not even admissible in court.
Yeah, like George Costanza said, it's not a lie if you believe it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfectly.
And not to
timed comment.
Psychoanalyze too much, but you would assume that somebody who is able to kill is also able to keep their nerves in check. Probably, maybe not. Obviously, there's, people are all different, but a normal person who's not a killer, I mean, I'd be so nervous to take a lie detector test.
Oh, yeah. In general. If you asked me if my name was Brooke Slater, I'd be shitting myself.
I think so.
Exactly. And it's interesting because just looking for physiological signs of deception in general is not really possible.
It's not science.
So there's a YouTube channel. It's called The Behavior Panel. And it comprises the world's top body language and behavior experts. Really interesting. They've been like prominently featured on television, and they have this YouTube channel that I sometimes will look at. And
Behavior Panel? Is that
the Behavior Panel, yeah. Right. I don't know anything about these individuals personally. I'm not endorsing them one way or the other. I'm just letting you know that I checked this channel out, and I've done so in the past because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But they will analyze body language, but they're also very quick to say, this is what we're noting. This is, signs that may indicate stress, or it may indicate, but we can't tell you what deception looks like.
Yeah.
So they were analyzing Burke, who gave an interview years and years after JonBenét's murder in 2016 on Dr. Phil. Mm-hmm. And they were looking at his eye movements. So he kept shifting between 5 and 7 o'clock with his eyes, which would suggest discomfort. And he was shaking his head no while saying no, but they weren't happening simultaneously. So like he would say, shake his head, and like a fraction of a second later say no. And all of these things indicate maybe high stress, but they were like very clear to say high stress does not equal deception.
Yeah, it's being on national television, whatever number of things.
Exactly.
Nonverbal communication is very good at helping you identify perceived emotions. Mm-hmm. It does nothing for thoughts, though.
Well said.
Yeah. Like you can tell how someone might be feeling, but the thoughts are just completely detached from emotions. They're two separate things.
Right. I also have read, and I talk about this in a little bit, some sources also indicate that Burke is neurodivergent. He may be on the autism spectrum. So judging him on his body language and eye movement and eye contact may not be fair. Mm-hmm. Returning to Steve Thomas's theory that Patsy was the killer, John Ramsey addressed it directly in the Netflix docuseries that recently came out, and he dismissed this theory entirely, saying it, quote, didn't pass the sanity test. John stated the following: Patsy had just recovered from stage 4 ovarian cancer. She was grateful to be alive. Do you think that her child wetting her bed would be a big deal? No. She was happy to be alive and to have some more time with her children.
Yeah.
And to say that she was dreading her 40th birthday. So she had all this pent up, anger that she took out on JonBenét. John's saying it just doesn't add up.
It doesn't.
It does not.
Yeah.
In terms of what exactly happened to JonBenét, here's what we know based on this poor little thing's autopsy, which I've seen pictures of. I do not recommend.
Oh.
Do not recommend.
Why don't you tell people what happened?
Oh my God. I texted Tank when this happened because I was like, this is some kind of sign. When I was looking at her autopsy report and some of the photos, again, I do not recommend, my lights flickered. Like absolutely one and done flicker. Hasn't really ever done it before. Didn't do it after. I felt like I'm hoping if we're going to look into signs and we're going to look into what it might mean, I'm hoping that she's, giving a sign that she's happy that we're, presenting her case and exploring it with empathy.
There's a price you pay for being plugged the fuck in.
Amen. I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it. JonBenét was first examined at the Ramsey home on the night of her murder, which, again, depending on if you think she was killed the evening before by Patsy, but her time of death and her date of death is labeled as December 26th. So she was examined on December 26th by pathologist Dr. Johnny Meyer. In his autopsy report, Meyer described the scene. Quote, the decedent was lying on her back on the floor, covered by a blanket and a Colorado Avalanche sweatshirt. Upon removing these items, the decedent was found with her arms extended above her head. At the time, JonBenét was just under 4 feet tall and weighed about 45 pounds. She was wearing a yellow bracelet inscribed with her name and the date 12/25/96. That was like that year's Christmas present, along with a heart-shaped red ink drawing on her left palm. She had on a long-sleeved, collarless white shirt decorated with silver sequins and white long underwear. Her underwear was urine-stained, and the inner aspect of the crotch had several red areas of staining and an area of abrasion involving the hymen and distal right lateral vaginal wall.
Really?
As well as a small amount of dried blood on parts of the labia majora. Meaning which you already know. JonBenét had been sexually assaulted, not by a penis, it was determined, but perhaps by an object.
So fucking terrible.
Awful. Now, a brief side note here. Apparently, a panel of pediatricians weighed in on this and determined that the inflammation of JonBenét's vulva pointed to prolonged sexual abuse sustained prior to the night in question. Let me say one thing.
Really?
Well, let me say one thing.
Yeah.
For every theory that says one thing, there's a theory that says another. For every expert that analyzes it and sees one thing, there's an expert that analyzes it and sees the opposite.
Yeah, we got to be able to discern, right?
This case is unreal in that sense.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there and so many moving parts. You're going on 28 years of a ongoing investigation.
Of people just probably, I mean, hate to say it, making shit up on the internet to make themselves, just to see if anybody else out there relates to it or whatever.
Yeah, or they really believe it, you know?
Yeah, but there's this thing that people do where they think just because they say something, that makes it
right.
Not only true, but even one step down, likely.
Mm-hmm.
Or even another step down, possible.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you can say it with words doesn't mean that it's possible, likely, or true.
Of course.
You can say anything you want at any time.
Right. Right. And you can also get experts to say anything at any time.
Yeah.
Right? Evidence collected included hair, fibers, ligatures, and clothing, as well as vaginal, rectal, and oral swabs. Other samples turned over to the Boulder Police Department included fingernail clippings, jewelry, hair samples, and blood.
Ligatures? How did they collect ligatures?
Where am I here? So ligatures are the what was wrapped around her.
Oh, ligature marks is what I'm thinking of?
You're thinking of the marks left by the ligatures.
Got it. Okay.
Following his initial examination, Dr. Meyer performed a full autopsy the next day, at which point a length of white cord was found wrapped around the neck with a double knot in the midline of the posterior neck. Now, there was also a garrote that was used to strangle JonBenét, which was 4.5 inches of wood from a long-handled artist's paintbrush that belonged to Patsy.
A garrote?
Yeah, we talked about this, remember?
I was just going to ask, yeah.
It's a device, for lack of a better way of saying it, that's used to strangle someone. So usually my understanding of a garrote is, and this was the case here.
Is that Toy Box Killer?
No, that was the cult, the Larry Ray cult that we did on Slaterpedia over on Patreon.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So in this case, the paintbrush was the handle rather from the paintbrush was 4.5 inches long. It belonged to Patsy, the paintbrush, because she painted. It was broken in half. Knots were tied around that and then used as handles to strangle JonBenét. An autopsy photograph shows the cord wrapped 7 times around the paintbrush handle, which is spotted with royal blue and black paint. Investigators have checked the paint on the handle against paint found in the Ramsey home. Is
that a ligature also? The garrote? That's considered a ligature, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
JonBenét also had a scalp contusion or bruise, as well as an 8.5-inch fracture on the right side of her skull. Among the marks noted in the autopsy report were 2 small rust-colored / purple abrasions on her lower back with no surrounding contusion. We're going to talk more about that. One was 1/8 by 1/16 of an inch, and the other was 3/16 by 1/8 of an inch.
An 8.5-inch fracture on a child's skull, by the way.
Huge.
I don't know if it was curving or zigzagging or wrapping around the entire head. Like that's a lot on a child's head.
So those 2 marks on her lower back is now believed to have been left by a stun gun, though some believe that it was left by toy train tracks like the ones that were found in Burke's bedroom. Meaning JonBenét was injured at the very least either because of or in the presence of her brother.
I forgot there was all those kids in that house too. Yeah.
If you subscribe to the belief that those marks on her back were caused by train tracks from Burke's room, it throws shade on him. And lastly, the coroner found pineapple in JonBenét's stomach. Cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma, according to the autopsy that was released by the Office of the Boulder County Coroner on December 27th, 1996. This is the timeline and the horrific gist of what happened. Most likely, JonBenét was tased in her bed, carried down into the basement where she was strangled. But before she actually died, her skull was bashed in with what investigators believe was a heavy black flashlight that was found on the kitchen counter. Though there was no trace evidence of JonBenét found on the flashlight, meaning it may not have been the weapon, or it was wiped clean. The weapon used could have also been a baseball bat instead, one that was not owned by the Ramseys, but that was found on the north side of the house and that had fibers consistent with fibers found in the carpet in the basement where JonBenét's body was found. Or it could have been the stun gun that was possibly used, hit her in the head, and that stun gun has never been recovered.
Really?
These are all theories. This is my point. Nothing has been proven. So all we can do is present what's...
Whoever did it must be so happy that these people are doing the hard work of obscuring the real story by just putting out bullshit theories.
Right. I mean, one of these maybe is the truth.
There is something.
There is a truth out there.
There is a truth.
Right. There was also green tinsel found in JonBenét's hair, which came from a decoration on the staircase where her body was taken down and where the ransom note was left.
Downstairs was a ransom note.
On the bottom of a spiral staircase. And I want to talk about the ransom note, which remains possibly the biggest piece of controversial evidence to this day.
Really?
Raising far more questions than it has ever provided answers. But first... Pop quiz.
Good. Break it up.
What is the kidnapping capital of the U.S.? A, Los Angeles, California. B, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. C, Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona?
Yeah. Did I say that in a way that...
No, but it's by the border.
You're so fucking smart. It's annoying. When I read that, I was like, what? Phoenix?
Yeah.
I was like, went down a rabbit hole after that. Like, why Phoenix? Brilliant.
Sorry for being so smart.
Just stop. So Patsy found the ransom note lying unobtrusively on the floor of a back spiral stairwell in the early morning hours of December 26th. Then she called 911 at 5:52 a.m. And she reportedly provided conflicting accounts of the events of that morning. In one version, she first checked JonBenét's room, noticed that she was missing, and then found the ransom note. In the more commonly repeated version, she discovered the note first, then ran upstairs to check on JonBenét, only to find her missing. Now, Tank, I would like for you to read exactly what the ransom note said, verbatim.
Okay.
It's in blue.
Fine. Listen carefully. We are a group. Should I do it with like a voice? Listen carefully.
Yeah.
Like anonymous?
Yeah.
Listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small, foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. That is about the right ratio. Like when I take money out at the ATM.
Good to know.
Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we, it's going to start with a run. So it's going to start with about 100 burpees. So if we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Wow, that's a long fucking ransom note.
Yeah, keep that in mind because that's a big potential clue here.
Any deviation of my instruction will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. The fuck?
Like, don't talk to anyone.
If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory, SBTC.
Well done. Well done. Grammy-like worthy.
Wow.
Excellent. Thank you. So this ransom note immediately raised suspicions and has many believing that it pointed towards Patsy's involvement or that it was an inside job at the very least. Okay, there is so much to unpack here with this ransom note.
I bet.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
First of all, the note was written on Patsy's notepad with a Sharpie from inside the home.
I was going to say, did they match the paper with any?
They sure did.
Okay.
Investigators questioned whether an intruder would have had time to write the nearly 3-page note during the crime and why it wasn't sent separately. To that end, according to retired FBI supervisory special agent and retired FBI profiler Jim Clementi and other experts, the ransom note, which was 374 words long, would have taken about 21 and a half minutes to write, which raises
more because your hand.
You gotta shake it out, which raises questions about the involvement of Patsy and John Ramsey, because to some, it seems unlikely that an intruder would have spent that much time inside the house, risk it, and also not draw attention. Also, according to former FBI profiler John Douglas, my man, a nearly 3-page ransom note was something that had never before been seen in any other kidnapping investigation, meaning this was the longest known ransom note in American criminal history.
Wow. Yeah.
So not only...
Usually it's a couple of words with like newspaper.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So not only did the note's author write a short story using Patsy's notepad, but they first wrote a draft version of the note originally addressed to Mr. and Mrs. and then I, which is believed to be the beginning of Ramsey, like the beginning of the capital R, just a line, before directing the actual note just to John. And the Sharpie that they used from the house, they then helpfully returned to the correct pen holder. Very bizarre, civilized, composed behavior from an outside intruder.
Yeah. Yes. But careless behavior from an insider.
Right.
Yeah.
The ransom note also contained unusual spelling errors, such as business and possession. Forensic linguistics expert James Fitzgerald notes that misspelling can serve as a deliberate disguise, possibly to hide the writer's educational background.
Do you know about the Nigerian prince scam emails?
Yeah, you've mentioned it maybe just on Patreon, so bring it up here.
So first of all, I got by one, almost bankrupt my family. I was like 18 though, 17. Yeah. So, and they were brand new, but they write them in broken English and bad grammar so that somebody who's smart enough to pick up on that just brushes it off. They're going after people who are unable to discern between, good grammar, bad grammar, fiction, reality. Like they're looking for people who are susceptible and maybe not, and maybe intellectually vulnerable.
Smart tactic on their part. Also in the ransom note, the phrase "and hence" was used, which is a bit upper crust. Oddly enough, or not, depending on your position, the Ramseys used the words "and hence" that year in their Christmas card. The phrase was, "Had there been no birth of Christ, there would be no hope of eternal life, and hence no hope of ever being with our loved ones again."
Wow. I mean,
it's just a discussion point, right? Like, believe what you want to believe, but it is weird.
Did you see Presumed Innocent with Jake Gyllenhaal?
No.
I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but it's giving. It's giving like protection, secrecy, cover up, unlikely perpetrator, not the one you thought, You should watch that show. It's very
sweating
good.
thinking about it.
I'm sweating just thinking about Jake Gyllenhaal.
I know you are. So James Fitzgerald also observed similarities between the note's handwriting and Patsy Ramsey's, noting that the feminine font style, and that's his word, used in the note was consistent with Patsy's handwriting. Handwriting expert Donald Foster, known for connecting Ted Kaczynski to the Unabomber, believed Patsy wrote the note. Although it has to be said that his credibility was questioned after he sent Patsy a letter months earlier declaring his belief in her innocence.
Months earlier than what?
Than him coming out and saying he believes she did it.
Oh, okay.
Again, this case, man.
Maybe he was trying to get on her good side.
Maybe. I don't know. It's a mindfuck.
Yeah.
And as recent as 2016, handwriting expert Sina Wong also maintained that it was highly probable that Patsy wrote the note. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation ruled out John Ramsey as the letter writer, but could not rule out Patsy Ramsey. Despite the theories, Patsy Ramsey always denied knowledge of the note until she discovered it.
Which doesn't mean that she killed her.
It does not. No. Correct. And it could have been a cover-up for somebody else who she loved dearly, who has been accused in theories of being the killer.
Burke.
Yes. And this has to be said, just real quick, modern handwriting analysis is widely regarded as a shaky field of forensics, kind of like odontology, that is susceptible to...
Like what?
Odontology, using like dental bite prints and bite marks. It's considered junk science by many.
The bite marks, not the dental records.
Right.
Dental
I'm sorry.
Records are solid.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So apparently handwriting analysis is susceptible to considerable cognitive bias. Additionally, studies have shown that less experienced handwriting examiners are more likely to make mistakes and tend to be more confident in their incorrect conclusions.
It's typical.
It's so typical, but so interesting.
Yeah.
While there are some methods, such as comparing specific letter formations or slant angles, that can be useful in distinguishing handwriting, the overall reliability of handwriting analysis is often debated within the scientific community.
I feel like it's either it's on or it's off. Like there is no debate. Like it's either obviously the same handwriting or you can't go by that. You know?
I don't know enough about it, but I would imagine that there's certain ways, like you're dragging the pen mark. So even if you're trying to disguise the handwriting, like you knee-jerk will just drag the pen the same exact way every single time you do an E, for example. You know what I mean? So, but I don't know. I just know that it's largely considered unreliable.
And it's probably going to be obsolete soon.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Who writes anymore? When I try and write, by the way, my handwriting is illegible.
I was trying to take notes the other day. I was on the phone with somebody, and I legitimately was like, I need a CAT scan because I can't write these words.
I know, and my hand fatigues like very soon after I
fast.
Start. It's wild.
My weak ass writing hand.
My weak ass.
My bitch ass
useless hand. My fingertips are superb at typing.
Yeah.
But I cannot hold a pen anymore.
Yep.
Okay, we're still dissecting this ransom note because it's fucking nuts.
Okay.
The ransom amount, $118,000.
Strange.
A bit specific. And it exactly matched a bonus that John Ramsey had recently received.
No.
Suggesting that the culprit had inside knowledge about Ramsey's finances.
Or self-knowledge.
Or perhaps if it was an intruder, they found a pay stub in the home. They knew that that money was hot and fresh and nasty and available. So they used that number for their ransom number.
Yeah. By the way, nice bonus.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
Let's quickly discuss the possibility of the culprit or culprits being professionally connected to John Ramsey on a big scale rather than an individual disgruntled employee or something like that, okay? If we look at the first line of the ransom note, it says, quote, "We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves." If you recall from the beginning, I mentioned how John worked at Axis Graphics, which was a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is a leading global security, aerospace, and defense contractor with a significant portion of its business conducted with the U.S. Department of Defense and other federal agencies.
It's
massive.
The
leading. It's massive, to say the least. For perspective on what Lockheed Martin does, in 2023, the company was awarded a contract worth over $2 billion to integrate hypersonic strike capabilities onto U.S. Navy surface ships.
Strike?
Yeah. In December 2024, Lockheed Martin received a $245 million contract extension from the U.S. Navy for the Mk-48 torpedo system. They're no fucking joke.
Oh, no, they are the number one arms contractor, military, whatever, in the world.
Yep.
Raytheon is big also, but it's like a very distant second, from what I understand.
You know this.
Lockheed Martin, yeah.
So the theory suggesting that Lockheed Martin may have been involved in JonBenét's murder resonates for some given the language in the ransom note and John's connection to the company. According to this theory, the motive would have been revenge against John Ramsey, perhaps linked to a business deal gone wrong, issues with foreign contracts, or even internal company disputes.
Or somebody who is from a small foreign faction who's been negatively affected by the U.S. military-industrial complex.
Yes.
Which is not likely, but
possible.
Yeah.
It's a highly speculative theory and it lacks solid evidence to support it. And both law enforcement and John Ramsey himself have rejected the idea of any connection between Lockheed and the crime. But it's out there, so we discussed it. So that's the much discussed and debated ransom note. More or less. There's a billion directions we could have gone down, so many nuances, but that's like the gist.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about the 911 call and the potential clues that might have revealed. Patsy made the call at 5:52 a.m. and frantically reported that her daughter had been kidnapped and that a ransom note had been left. However, it's what happened after she finished the call that may have provided crucial evidence. According to an analysis of the background noise conducted by the Aerospace Corporation, which was done before Patsy actually hung up the phone.
Wait, hold on. An analysis of the background noise done by the aerospace company, Lockheed Martin, or a different?
No, a different one. The name is Aerospace Corporation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So they conducted an analysis of the background noise that was taken before Patsy actually hung up the phone, but she thought that she hung up, or she thought that the call ended, and a significant moment may have been detected. You can allegedly hear JonBenét's 9-year-old brother, Burke, saying, "What did you find?" followed by John responding, "We're not talking to you." And then Patsy in distress saying, "Help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus."
That's a long time to think you've hung up when you haven't hung up.
Yeah. Well, she was frantic for one reason or another.
By the way, I thought Burke was like 22 years old. Didn't realize he was 9.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, it doesn't seem likely to me.
Let's get into it.
Okay.
But first, I just want to say this. The 911 dispatcher, who's a woman named Kimberly Arculeta, said that she heard 2, possibly 3 voices on that call.
Yeah.
She also claims that she heard Patsy say something like, "Okay, we've called the police, now what?"
Wow.
And that to her, the call seemed rehearsed. Here's why hearing 3 voices in the room is important. Both John and Patsy have consistently maintained in every interview that Burke was asleep in his room until the police arrived that morning at 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So how could his voice be heard on the recording? Were they covering for him? Did Burke have something to do with his sister's death? Now we're going to talk about Burke.
But he said, "What did you find?" Right?
Yeah. So what he could have just been saying, like, "What did you find?" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what'd you find?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to talk about Burke. The video of 9-year-old Burke being interviewed shortly after JonBenét's murder raised suspicions for many people following this case, including some investigators. They were very disturbed by his playful, nonchalant demeanor, especially when he dismissed the idea of his sister's killer returning and said, "I'm basically just going on with my life." I guess if you interpret that, when the child psychologist who he was in the room with when he was being videotaped mentioned the killer, he put that in first person. "I'm basically just going on with my life."
Which means what?
When talking about the killer, the child psychologist.
Oh, okay.
Burke was like, "Oh, the killer? Me? Yeah, no, I'm just going on with my life."
Yeah.
Burke even demonstrated how JonBenet might have been killed, mimicking an imaginary weapon.
O.J. Simpson ass. If I did it. I wrote a fucking book called If I Did It.
I mean, that was bananas.
Holy shit. And then he also blurred out the if. Like not blurred it, but it was like the same color as the background. And it just said, I did it.
Batshit.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that I mentioned this earlier, that Burke has been described by some sources as being neurodivergent, possibly on the autism spectrum. So judging him on the minutia of his behavior and his mannerisms may not be fair.
Also 9.
He's also 9. I haven't confirmed that diagnosis. It's like very contingent upon the source type thing.
Yeah.
But it has to be said. Later, a family friend named Judith Miller revealed that Burke had previously struck JonBenét in the face with a golf club a year and a half prior. Which, I just got to say this, my niece accidentally struck my son in the face with a wooden mallet.
Yeah.
And he needed stitches.
I hit my neighbor in the head with a baseball bat.
Exactly. So
standing behind me, though, and I swung the bat.
Right.
She shouldn't have been standing behind.
That's what happened with the wooden mallet. They were playing croquet?
Croquet. No.
Croquet.
Croquet.
You're thinking crochet.
No, you're thinking of a chicken croquet.
I'm not. I don't even know what that is.
I think the game is called croquet. A chicken croquet is like a breaded piece of chicken thing that you can make very easily.
And eat. Right. No, I don't know what. I'm talking about the game where you have a wooden mallet and where you give it to kids and they just be swinging it all willy-nilly like.
Yeah, a lot of kids play croquet. Croquet?
You looking it up?
Yeah, so croquet is croquet. Croquette. A croquette is a deep-fried roll originated in France. Yeah, it's croquette. But whatever.
Okay.
I don't even know why we're...
Wow, yeah.
Who knows?
We needed that.
I got lost. I went on a little mental trip because my mom used to make croquettes.
Oh, yum.
That's why I said they were easy to make.
My understanding is this family friend, Judith Miller, was implying that Burke hit JonBenét in the face with the golf club maliciously.
Yeah.
Additionally, Burke previously demonstrated some other troubling behavior, such as smearing his own feces around the bathroom and in JonBenét's bedroom.
Yeah, that's weird.
This behavior might point to a strained sibling relationship or indicate that Burke was experiencing anger, frustration, or a lack of emotional regulation, which then may have manifested in a very serious way later on.
Question. So Burke was of the first marriage or of this marriage?
This one. It's her full sibling.
Full sibling. So, I mean, yeah, you're a 9-year-old kid. Your younger sister's a beauty queen. She's getting all of the attention.
Yep.
You're on the spectrum. You're not really
Possibly.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying all of these possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it may suggest a response to the family dynamics like you're describing, right? JonBenét was always in the spotlight and not so much him. I think it could.
He was on Dr. Phil, though.
Yeah, 2016. I think it may also represent unresolved trauma, similar to how JonBenét was wedding herself. If he was having accidents and then retaliating, rebelling, or regressing, acting like a toddler, a baby.
Oh, yeah. Well, this household, by the way, does not seem great. Just at first glance and for starters, like
right.
Cursory glance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also, to me, makes more sense that they would cover up for their son rather than for each other.
Mm-hmm. Those who believe Burke is responsible for JonBenét's death believe that he may have struck JonBenét with a flashlight in a fit of anger after she took some pineapple from the bowl that he'd been eating from on Christmas night. Remember how I said that pineapple was found in JonBenét's stomach during her autopsy?
Yeah, but that would have been the night before, not why call it 5:57 a.m.
They didn't know until, the next morning, let's say.
Or they stayed up all night trying to figure out what to do.
Or they wrote that ransom note between.
Yeah, that took quite a while.
It took about 3.5 pages or whatever, right?
Yeah, yep. Okay, so yeah, the note was probably written before the call because the call incorporated the note into it. They said it was a possible kidnapping.
If it's a cover-up.
Yeah.
Her parents did not remember giving her any pineapple the night before she died, but there was a bowl of pineapple in the kitchen that contained Burke's fingerprints on it, which is not abnormal if he was eating from the bowl.
Yeah.
In terms of the flashlight, it was found on the kitchen counter, which normally was kept in a drawer under a bench. However, at the time, this meant little since time cannot be attributed to fingerprints, meaning he could have technically left the fingerprints on the pineapple bowl at a different time when he was eating it or at a different time altogether.
Yeah.
Going with the theory that Burke killed JonBenét, while there may not have been necessarily intent to kill, the subsequent actions of the Ramseys Patsy's potential authorship of the ransom note, John's discovery of JonBenét in the basement, and their reluctance to cooperate with law enforcement may suggest a cover-up.
Retroactive premeditation.
Nice.
Very good.
According to Steve Thomas, who I mentioned earlier, was the former Boulder PD detective who resigned shortly after taking on this investigation, it took Patsy and John 4 months before they agreed to answer questions with the police. He claims that when it was just a kidnapping, right, which was a few hours, they cooperated with the police. But once it became a homicide, they did not. Regardless of who you believe killed JonBenét, the fact that John and Patsy did not cooperate with law enforcement after the initial response to the kidnapping 911 call seems kind of irrefutable. First of all, they immediately lawyered up, like on the actual date of their daughter's death. They also hired a team of private investigators and forensic analysts to circumnavigate the PD, as well as a PR company off the bat, which was not a great look for them.
Yeah. I mean, there's only 3 options here.
Yep.
Mom, Dad, or Burke.
Or intruder.
No, I don't buy that.
Because you haven't heard all the evidence yet.
Oh my God. I'm going to be even more confused than I am.
No. Well,
I don't mean like it's hard to pay attention. I mean like internally.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's what I said. You have 28 years of evidence and
speculation,
DNA being found, and it wasn't tested originally. Now it's tested again, but we're going to test it even a 3rd time because there's more advancements in DNA. So now you're like reinterpreting old interpretations. It's a lot. The Ramseys also refused to submit to the lie detector test, which I mentioned, but it's why they didn't cooperate with the police that's important and possibly very telling. Either way, however you look at it, if they did it or if they didn't. According to Steve Thomas, and this is a quote, attempts to gather evidence were met with refusals, and instead it was suggested that we ask for permission from the Ramseys before proceeding, meaning the police were in the back pocket of the very wealthy, powerful Ramsey family. But according to John Ramsey, nothing was further from the truth. He had been vocal in saying that the police developed immediate tunnel vision, focusing on him and Patsy as the killers and literally no one else ever. And once they fixated on the parents, they stopped considering other possibilities, which led to sloppy police work, potential corruption, and missed opportunities in the investigation. And this, according to John Ramsey and many others, is why the perpetrator has never been caught and why they hired a private team of investigators and analysts. Pop quiz. According to a 1999 U.S. Department of Justice study, what percentage of child murders are perpetrated by the parents? A, 16%.
Okay.
B, 42%. C, 61%.
Can you say them again?
16, 42, 61.
What percentage of child murders are perpetrated by the parents?
Right.
I don't want to guess at this. So 16, 42, or 60?
61.
61. 42%. 61%.
61%.
That's what I was going to say.
Yep. So,
that's too fucking many.
Oh, yeah.
By the way.
It's atrocious. So while it's possible that the police department felt it was the parents because statistically speaking, that was the most likely situation, some speculate that the Boulder PD intentionally pinned the murder on John and Patsy to cover up the fact that they had a complete lack of control over the investigation and the crime scene from the outset.
Well, it's like when a wife goes missing. Like, what is the assumption there?
The husband.
Obviously, yeah. Which is unfair, by the way, might I add.
Well, you're looking at statistics. It's not fair or unfair, just it is. It's not out of nowhere. It's not unfair.
It's got a basis.
Right. Honestly, though, the JonBenét Ramsey investigation just might be the most jacked up investigation I have ever learned about.
Wow.
And we're going to leave off on part 1 right now with a pop quiz. And then, of course, we're going to get into that investigation in part 2. But first, pop quiz.
Another pop quiz.
Yeah, a doubleheader. Which statement is true? I know you hate these, but it's just going to have to be something you put up with. A, this tragic murder was the first one to occur in Boulder in 1995.
Okay.
B, the first officer to arrive at the scene had only ever worked desk duty prior to that night. C, the key witness to the crime initially was a pet parrot that kept mimicking the phrase, Santa sent me.
See?
No.
You're fucking out of your mind. Wow. Say that one again. That fictional choice? That wasn't real, that you sat and somehow...
The key witness to the crime initially was a pet parrot that kept mimicking the phrase, Santa sent me.
And you're just like fine with that? Like the fact that you are able to...
I'm actually proud. So yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. B?
No.
Well, A didn't make any sense to me.
Why?
That it was the first murder to occur in Boulder in 1995.
Yeah, there were 6 days left of the year. That was the first murder to happen.
Oh, okay.
The truth is, the Boulder PD was woefully unprepared and inexperienced to handle a case of this level.
Yeah.
They didn't even have a homicide unit because crime rates were so low.
Wow.
According to former FBI profiler John Douglas, the Boulder PD handled an average of a single homicide a year. Throughout the investigation on December 26th, numerous procedural mistakes were made by responding officers, which significantly impacted the course of the entire investigation, like forever. And many believe that had proper procedures been followed from the beginning, the perpetrator may have already been caught. More on that and so much more, including the investigation itself, evidence analysis, and additional theories on who killed JonBenét Ramsey, all in part 2.
Wow.
So please come back.
Yeah. I am glued to my seat here.
Sick.
Yeah. This is one of those cases that like everybody knows about. And obviously a lot of people know a lot about it, but I didn't know anything.
This case...
I knew the theory was that her parents killed her, or like the overarching theory.
Yeah, this case in some ways reminds me of Jack the Ripper in the sense that there are like ripperologists out there. There are people who know this case inside and out. I mean, because there's so much to consume.
Ramseyologists.
And it's like, right, once you kind of go down that rabbit hole, man, you can live down there.
Yeah, or you can keep digging.
Or you can keep digging.
Carve your own path, your own crazy fucking path.
So, yeah, I know we're not done with the case yet, but I was still wondering if you had a Tanks tidbit for us.
I do. What?
A Tanks tiddy.
Yeah, say what it is, please. I do have a Tanks tiddy.
Great.
And it is an important one. So watch this with an adult in your life. And if you have any questions after that, ask them or email us, psychopediapod@gmail.com, and we are here for you, okay? This is a personal titty. Okay? So I realized recently, I'm fine. Let me just say, first of all. So don't get worried, okay, about me. I'm in a constant state of seeking and progressing and developing and whatever. First of all, I'm pulling back on that because I want to just make do with what I have. I have so many good things floating around in my brain. So I want to like distill them down to like a few, because every time I hear something new or good, I'm like, oh, that's the ticket.
Yeah.
No, hold on. That's the ticket. That's how I'm going to be happy. It's the application of the principles is what makes you happy, not the discovery of them.
Yeah, word.
Right? So I have spent my entire life, literally, almost for as long as I can remember, trying to bring laughter and peace to others through inspiration, reminding them that it's not so bad. There's actually a lot of good out there, making them laugh, whatever it is. I'm not going to stop doing that, but I'm going to make myself the primary target.
I think that's wonderful.
Of that.
Why? Do you feel like you've been neglecting yourself in pursuit of making other people happy?
I feel like it's like when you come home after a day of being polite and you come home and like you're just a dick to your family because you're exhausted from trying to please strangers all day long. It is exhausting to try and please strangers all day long, by the way. But if you start at home and you please the people that you please the people that mean the most to you and take care of them, that's energizing. And then you go out into the world, a better version of yourself, rather than going out into the world, raw dogging it and just depleting yourself coming home. It's like anything, decision fatigue. It's just like you only have so much energy during the course of a given day. Psychic energy, mostly, like your like not physical energy, which I think that psychic energy affects physical energy and vice versa. But point is, just take care of yourself.
Yeah, take care of yourself, your inner network. Obviously, don't be an asshole to other people, but you don't have to be like a hamster on a wheel, like constantly trying to make it happen for other people.
Yeah. See, the thing is, if you're kind to yourself and those around you, the being nice to strangers kind of like takes care of itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're generally happier and more fulfilled, I think. So
and when you're at peace, this was going to be another Tank's Titty, but I'm going to piggyback it onto this one. The little things are what matter. The little interactions you have, the walking over a piece of paper that's on the floor in your home or bending down to pick it up. Because coping mechanisms, unhealthy coping mechanisms, let's say, come out when the stress level is too high for you to deal with at that moment. The way it gets there is by having little micro stressors over the course of the day just cumulatively pile up on top of each other.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're yelling at your kid and all they did was like ask for a water.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I hate when that happens, and it does happen.
Or they got out of bed for you're reacting like they got out of bed 30 times. It's like it's twice or 3 times.
Yeah.
Reserve some energy for yourself and those important to you.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
I love your Tank Titty a lot. So last night I was playing soldiers, little army figures with my son, my 8-year-old. And I was like phoning it in for the beginning because I really wanted to tighten up this case, knowing we were recording today, right? I'm like lining up my guys, like my army guys, like whatever. And he's like, Mom, this is supposed to be a war. Like, where's your strategy? And he's really into
dead.
it. Exactly. He waited all day to play with me. All day. I came home. I was at the library researching till so late last night. We didn't even start playing till 9:00 at night.
Wow.
So I turned it on, similar to what you're saying. I was like, I'm giving myself, happily, honestly, but like to researching and spending all this time in the library. And then I'm coming home and I'm not giving him the time and like focused attention. So I like turned it on. I started putting on my little soldiers and really clever places. Like this guy's the sniper. So I put him on top of the steps. And he was more fulfilled in the 15 minutes that we played with that level than I have seen him in a long time. And it really was such a lesson for me.
Yeah, and that's about as long as it takes.
Yeah.
You think, if my kid asked me to play, I'm like, I'm going to be on the ground for 3 hours. I'm going to die here. It's like, no, man, like 7 to 10 minutes of intense play.
But what I would have normally done is I would have phoned it in, honestly, because I would have been tired, just needing to get back to my computer.
Yeah.
I would have felt guilty, so I would have given him longer, but it would have been lower quality.
Yeah.
Instead, I gave him 15 real minutes. Like we had the whiteboard out, we were strategizing. We were,
Yeah.
And it was amazing for both of us.
And you know what the best part is? Like my younger son, who thinks that I walk him down to the end of the block every day before school. I've done it literally 3 times in his entire life. He's going to remember my mom giving me undivided attention and playing with me and making me feel like, like I was a priority.
And that night, he was like rubbing my hand. Like he was so beyond affectionate and loving. I saw it coming out of him too.
Yeah.
It was a really great lesson, and it's absolutely what you're talking about right now.
And just to wrap it up, on the contrary, when you are, or when I am, just acting in ways that would indicate that I'm desperate, just trying to survive, using like living in that second toolbox big time, I'm not as nice to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact. I've noticed it more recently than in the past. I guess maybe I'm becoming more aware of it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, when they say like, the state of mind preceding a drink for an alcoholic, restless, irritable, and discontent, they say that certain behaviors can lead you back to a drink. And I was always like, oh, whatever, man, just manage your shit. You know what I mean? I'm not a saint. I'm not going to like not have any, any actions that are not out of
toolbox one.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a human being, but I do just like I'm just not as nice to my family when I don't feel good about how I've acted that day. And again, it's the little things.
I'm with you on that.
Take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. Be honest with who needs it the most at any given time.
It's always your dog.
It's never your dog. They're so happy as it is. And we will see you guys at the next episode.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.